Welcome to the latest Seahawks Draft Blog live stream. Rob Staton, Robbie Williams here, and we are on the evening, at least where I am. It is the evening of the day before free agency begins, Robbie. So, Seahawks have spent the last few days creating a lot of cap space. We are yet to have any details on the Tyler Lockett restructure. I know that Curtis has been sort of projecting, I think, about between $7 and $9 million to add to the effective cap space, which would put the Seahawks at about 41 million. There's Nick Bellaw's contract still not showing up on over the cap. That's another 2.8 million. So there's a chance that the Seahawks, rough guess, about 43 to 45 million dollars in effective cap space, which would put them easily in the top 10. It'd be a similar amount to, say, the Lions, the Bengals, the Colts, and the Cardinals. A lot of money to spend, but the Seahawks have easily the fewest number of players contracted. The Seahawks have 44 players contracted. The Dolphins have 46. You've got 3 teams on 50, and the rest, we're talking 50s and 60s there. So the Seahawks do have a lot of cap space, but they also have a lot of things to get done. So I don't know where you want to start, Robbie. Like, what do you make of all of the moves this week? Quandre Diggs, Jamal Adams, Will Disley going, Tyler Lockett restructuring. What do you make of all of that? Is there anything that you particularly like or dislike?
I mean, I like the restructure of Lockett's contract, even though I don't know what it is. I think that was good. I was pretty sold on the fact that he wasn't leaving until you kind of went over the numbers. Then I was like, well, maybe I'll change my mind there. But I really think that these are all moves that we've talked about. There's nothing that's been earth-shattering. I think they're all moves that probably needed to happen. For me, I'm quite excited for this free agency period to see kind of what they do. And with all the holes, I expect it to be a little different. I don't expect us to go out. I mean, I guess it's really not that different. We don't really go out and make that big of a splash anyways, but I expect it to kind of be like, let the market come to them instead of chasing the market and kind of seeing what it is. I don't really see for any need really to go out and spend big money when you just got it, because it'll go really fast. And the only name that I've seen linked to the Seahawks is Rayshon Jenkins from Carolina, right?
He's with Jacksonville.
Or Jacksonville, sorry. Yeah. It's the only name that I've seen linked to the Seahawks so far. And so, I think you're going to see a lot of people, or maybe a lot of like maybe less known players coming in. Then I think there's a good opportunity for them to come in and compete. And that's what I want to see. I want to see these players coming in that, I don't want some of these big name free agents signed because it'll take up our cap too quick, unless one like totally makes sense on a trade that we would need. But again, someone just said this, and then this is the other thing that I'm really hoping for. I hope they don't overspend. I hope they don't outbid themselves like they did for Will Disley. Like they overbid for themselves and didn't seem like a smart contract at the time, made 0 sense. And I just hope they don't overpay for someone when they don't need to.
Yeah, I think with the Jenkins visit, I think it's indicative of perhaps what might happen and kind of what I hope happens. He's a player who I can't imagine is going to cost a lot of money. If he is going to cost a lot of money, then I hope they dodge that one. But he's 30 years old. He's a really strong leader, good character. The Seahawks have lost, considerable experience on defense. They are, I think it's almost certain to say, not going to bring back Bobby Wagner. So if you lose whatever you think of Wagner and Diggs at this stage in their career, when you lose that sort of leadership and experience, finding somebody who can replace some of that at a very affordable cost, I think is a very, very savvy move. So I've seen a bit of reaction to this, and I'm seeing it in the chat now. People saying, well, he's old. Why are they signing him? That's why. Because Mike McDonald uses apparently a lot of 3 safety sets. So you're going to need some depth at safety. He is a versatile safety. He can do a bit of everything. And he's experienced and is a leader. You can't have a whole team full of young, raw players. There has to be some guidance there. There has to be that one player who says, I've seen this before, you go and stand over there, we're going to adjust to this play for this particular look. So that's why they're looking at someone like Rayshon Jenkins, because, like I said, Diggs is gone, he ain't coming back. Adams is gone, he ain't coming back. Bobby Wagner ain't coming back. So they're sort of making a turn, and I am open to this kind of deal, provided it's not, like you said there, Robbie, expensive. Because it's not even so much bidding against themselves for people like Will Disley. It was the bizarre giving Bruce Irvin a 32% pay increase when they re-signed him from Carolina, or in 2020. There was just, it didn't seem there was any reason to overpay for Bruce Irvin in that situation. So to sort of bring it back to the question I initially asked, Robbie, about the moves that are made, I think Tyler Lockett, I'm in favor of that deal because it's going to seriously lower his cap hit. The alternative was to pay him to play somewhere else, and that would have been a waste of money. They've gone with a contract to Tyler Lockett. He's been fantastically productive for the Seahawks. I think last season was his most disappointing season that I can remember when he's been healthy. And you would just hope that in the new offense that he can get back to being the Tyler Lockett that we all know he can be. And there's no reason why that can't happen. So I think paying him to play in Seattle rather than paying him to go away is a good thing. I'm absolutely delighted they finally moved on from that chuff, Jamal Adams. Absolutely delighted. It has just been a Band-Aid they've needed to rip off for a long time. And they've finally done it. And I don't know if he's going to play again, frankly, Robbie. I don't know who signed him at this stage. I don't know why anybody would entertain that. I think there's a good chance he might be out of the league as a consequence of this. I am constantly confused by the people saying they can't believe that Quandre Diggs has been cut. The guy was at a cap hit of about $21 million. And I'm sorry, Robbie, but I keep seeing people, and it kind of comes from the same kind of sources all the time. It's, somebody comes out with Quandre Diggs really good, and they put that out into the internet. A few other people pick up the baton and run with it, Robbie. I just kept saying he might be able to take away the post very, very well. Good for him. That's a positive thing for him. But there were plenty of plays. They just didn't pass the eye test last year that this was a top-end, high-performing safety. I am not for a second suggesting that PFF is flawless, but to have him and Jamal Adams as the 87th and the 88th ranked safeties in the league, Robbie, it's not by accident, that is it. It's not as if he was 35th and he probably should have been 20th. He was ranked as one of the worst safeties in the league. The bad angles, not making the tackles, giving up on certain plays because it seemed like that wasn't his responsibility. I wasn't impressed with Quandre Diggs last year. And the fact that they were both earning $48 million, it made it an absolute no-brainer to move on. And I'm afraid with Will Disley, when you aren't getting the targets, when you're the third most targeted tight end, and yet you're earning $10 million, you ain't going to be sticking around in that contract, Robbie. So I think as far as all of those moves concerned, 2 thumbs up from me. I agree with all of them. And do you go along with that?
Yeah, again, like I said, it's all players that we had previously talked about and kind of expected to be cut. So nothing about it is surprising, and it's good. I mean, it's time to move forward, especially with the safeties. And speaking of the safety position, I mean, I don't really want to dive too much into the safeties, but I mean, there's quite a bit of safeties being cut right now, and I think that the market's saturated. You could get somebody like Darnell Savage, who when the ball's in the air, he's a great safety. I mean, and I think that's a guy, he's younger. You get him probably on a cheaper contract to bring him in. I mean, if you think about, Diggs's contract, you throw a little money at this guy. I mean, I don't think it's going to cost much. I think it's a good time to be in the need for safeties.
I think you're right that the market is coming towards the teams who probably need them. And I hope the Seahawks play this to their advantage, Robbie. I hope that they will sort of see what the market is, because it'd be the worst thing in the world now to get Jenkins in for a visit into Seattle and try to not let him out the building and giving him a contract that in 7 days' time might look like an overpay. The best thing to do is to use the sheer number of veteran safeties that are out there to your advantage. Now, I I don't really want to go down the Darnell Savage route personally. I don't want to look at players like that who I think have constantly flattered to deceive. I'm very happy. If this is why I like Jenkins. He's just solid, experienced, is a great character guy, great energy, and I think in McDonald's system will be able to do a job. Now, provided the cost isn't great, get me 3 safeties like that. I really don't care. Like, I'd quite like to draft one because I think there are quite a few good safeties in this draft. Not a lot, but a handful that I would be interested in. But if you can sign a veteran and draft one, great. And I don't care whether Jenkins is 30 or not for the chat. You know, it doesn't matter. Like, it really doesn't matter. Like, he's not like he's running a 4.8 out there. You know, he's pretty quick. He's a great athlete. So I'm in favor of that. And I think what I'd rather them do, Robbie, is what I said in the video that I published out yesterday, is just let the situations come to them. And if they don't, then just live with it. I don't think this team is going to solve problems. I'm seeing a lot of other people who are on, you know, part of Seahawks Twitter that they're already doing what they always do, Robbie, producing their wish lists. If you could just spend big money on this position, if you can just spend big money on that position. I don't think I can't see a single player, Robbie, on this free agent list who is going to turn the Seahawks into anything serious this year or next. I just can't. I think you'll just be throwing money at players for the sake of it. I think you're better off just almost looking for those guys who are 27 or younger, who come at a certain cost, who can become contributors for your team. And I think that there's only one way for the Seahawks to become a true contender, and that is going to be to draft a franchise quarterback. You've got the weapons. You've got to improve your pass protection, but I think you can do that. I don't think you necessarily have to start throwing money at old guards to do that. And you've got to find a difference-making pass rusher. And when you sort of say things like, just go and find a franchise quarterback and a difference-making pass rusher in the draft, people laugh and go, everybody's trying to do that. Yeah, they are. But if you don't do that, Robbie, you aren't going to be a contender. It's as simple as that. Like, we can talk about getting an 18 million a year guard or a linebacker like Patrick Queen. It ain't going to make a jot of difference until they get a franchise quarterback and difference-making pass rusher, probably through the draft. So there's nothing that could happen this week, Robbie, that makes me think this is going to be a field-tilting move. Therefore, why spend millions and millions and millions of dollars on solutions that are not forthcoming?
Yeah, no, I agree. There's one thing I'm not that I would say I disagree with, but I wouldn't mind them spending a little bit of money on the line. So if they wanted to spend some money, I'm not saying get an old guard, but if they got a guard, I wouldn't be mad about it. If they got someone on the D line, I wouldn't be mad about it. Help build the trenches, especially on the offensive line. I think someone who's got some experience helps out. So if they're able to get somebody that they feel like can be a plug and play guard, then by all means do it. I don't think this is, necessarily a wrong move. I do think spending a bunch of money on linebackers and safeties is a terrible idea. But if you're going to spend your money on the line, I'm all for that.
The thing is, though, can you remember the 2021 free agency period? I'm going to try and... Okay, here we go. Here's the original list for 2021 free agents. That felt like the year if you were going to go out and sort of spend on the offensive line, that was going to be the year to do it. So to run through the list, Trent Williams was a free agent that year. Obviously, it was going to be very hard to prize him away from the Niners, but still, he was a free agent that year. Brandon Scherf was a free agent. Am I looking at the right year? Yeah, I am. Joe Thuney, or Joe Tooney, whichever one it is, was a free agent. Corey Linsley was a free agent. Kevin Zeitler was a free agent. I'm sure there's another one that I'm missing here. But do you get my point? Like, when someone like Joe Tooney hits free agency, you think, yeah, that's somebody who... And the Chiefs went and paid him an absolute fortune. And, well, the rest is history. That was off the back of them losing a Super Bowl. They've won 2 more since. When I actually look at the guards in this free agency class, Robbie. I just don't think any of them are of that level. There's no sort of top 5 guard out there, and that's the problem. So people say Jonah Jackson. Who's the other one who's out there who's going to go? Robert Hunt, who I really liked in the draft, but when Kevin Dotson has just signed a $16 million a year deal, a year removed from just being traded for a ham sandwich by the Steelers to the Rams, that's going to be the starting point for negotiations now for people like Jonah Jackson and Robert Hunt. Do you want to spend 19 million, 18 million on a guard? Because if I'm spending 18 million on a guard, Robbie, they better be probably the best guard in the NFL. And I don't think the best guard in the NFL is available in this free agency class.
Yeah. Again, I'm not saying big money. I'm saying if you want to go spend some money, though. I'm not saying big money. If you want to go take a flyer on somebody who you think's got an opportunity, who's got some experience, I'm all for that. They're going to have to spend money somewhere. And I'm just saying, don't go spend a bunch of big money on safeties and linebackers when I'd rather get a couple guards, at a cheaper cost or a couple tackles and a couple defensive linemen, some edge rushers. I'd rather them spend the money there to see what sticks instead of spend a bunch of money on linebackers and safeties. That's what I was.
Well, I agree with that. I think the part of the problem though is I don't think, because when the top of the market is so high, those sort of second and third tier guards end up being overpaid as well. So it ends up becoming a really difficult market to deal in. And I agree with you, Robbie. I don't want to spend millions and millions of dollars at linebacker and safety again, because those are the mistakes that they've got into in the past. But I don't feel like I'm desperate to see them spend money anywhere, frankly. Like if it is going to go anywhere, I don't know, Christian Wilkins and Leonard Williams, fine. If they did that, if they signed those 2 players on Monday, I'm sure we'd jump on a stream, Robbie, and be quite excited by it, because it'd be interesting, wouldn't it? But even then, I'm not sure it would make that much of a difference. I'm not sure we'd suddenly see the Seahawks, wow, look at this defense with these 2 highly paid defensive tackles in the middle. Not sure that is going to be a solution either. And there just aren't the players in this free agency class that I really, really want to go after. And there very rarely is. So I think it's probably worth just trying to avoid bad contracts at this point and then trying to find the value. And when I sort of think, like John Runyon at Green Bay, what's he going to get? Like, he's a guard. Like, he could be interesting. He's at a decent age, good athlete. Is he somebody you look at? What's John Simpson going to get? Because I see John Simpson ranked like 75th on one top 100 list, and then I see him like ranked 15th on another one. So he could be one of those guards who gets 19 million or something. I thought Alohi Gilman was a good option at safety, but he's now being talked about as somebody who's got red hot interest. So maybe he's going to end up getting a lot more money than I thought, and he's not going to be an option. A lot of people, I'm sure, would love to see Frankie Louvu from Carolina because he's Washington State and he's plays with his hair on fire. But how much is he going to get on the open market? Could get quite a lot of money. So then I start looking and thinking, okay, well, if that's going to be the case, I personally would rather pay Josie Jewell like a few million to just basically call the plays at linebacker than spend an absolute obscene fortune on Queen or Jordan Brooks, personally. I would rather pay Austin Hooper $2 million than perhaps Noah Fant 14. Those are the kind of things that I'm looking at there, and those sort of 1 year prove it deals. I'm happy to go down that road. I think a lot of fans will be pissed off if they do that, Robbie, because they'll kind of think, oh God, we've been here before and this never works. But I'm happy to do that. Can I share this comment? Can I just share this? Oh, go ahead, Robbie, and then I'll share this comment.
Yeah, I was just going to say, just let free agency come to you instead of going out and like reaching for too much. And some of those players will fall in your lap. I mean, and that's kind of how Chris Averill and Michael Bennett fell into our lap. We just let it play out, and that's how those guys ended up with us. And I could see that happening again. I don't think you have to go in and be like, well, this guy might make 19, so we're going to have to pay him 19. Let the market play out. So I saw somebody say something earlier in one of the chats, like, that it's a good lineman draft. And so, it could bring down the value a little bit. And people think, well, I could get this guy in the draft. And so, and he'll be younger. So that those things can definitely weigh into the decision-making when it comes to, being able to sign some free agents. Sorry, go ahead.
I wanted to share this, just it's a little sort of throat clearing, and then we'll get back to the free agency talk. Sean has put this message in. Look, super chat away, because that's the best way to, one, support the channel, and two, get your comments on. But when I see a comment like this, I do think it needs to be touched on. So Sean says, love the idea of a franchise quarterback, but with Trey Lance a bust, Zach Wilson a bust, and Matt Jones traded for a late pick, they're no sure things. Well, yes, but this is the problem. When you look at the extremes, Sean, and you pick three extreme negatives, that's one way of looking at it. I could easily go, I love the idea of a franchise quarterback, and look at Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and CJ Stroud. We should definitely go and get one. So that's the other extreme. I mean, the truth is that, yes, there comes risk with being bold, aggressive to get a franchise quarterback, or simply drafting one at your native pick. But there's an equal amount of risk for avoiding the position altogether and sort of muddling along, because we've seen so many teams do that. The simple fact is, and Robbie, if you disagree with this, or if you agree with it, you tell me what you think. The simple fact is that in order to win big in this league, I personally think it doesn't matter what the Seahawks have at linebacker or safety or anything like that. It's simply going to come down to, who is Seattle's quarterback? Do they have a difference maker on the defensive line? Can they protect said quarterback? Whatever way that comes, whether that's great coaching and scheming, players elevating their performance, or because you've drafted 5 first-round picks on the offensive line, whatever it is, can the protection just do its job? And you need to have weapons, and I believe the Seahawks already have fantastic weapons. So I think that's the one box they've got ticked. I think they're underway with trying to build an offensive line. I think Scott Huff's going to have a tremendous impact there. But they've got to get the quarterback, and they've got to get the difference-making pass rusher, whether that's at tackle or at defensive end. And Robbie, until we get those things in Seattle, we are going to just be running on a treadmill. We ain't going to be going anywhere. We're going to be moving, but we're not going to be going anywhere. And my aim, dream, ambition for the Seahawks is to be playing in the game the Niners have played in, and that the Rams have played in. And I think to get there, we are going to have to start taking chances on quarterbacks and pass rushers to get there. And what I would also say on that is, I don't think you can fear making mistakes. I think if John Schneider drafts a quarterback, even if he trades up from this year and it doesn't work, Robbie, you've just got to embrace that as a franchise and crack on and keep going. And I think more owners should empower their GMs to say, you are not going to be judged on one quarterback pick, because anything can happen, which means that player is a failure. People, who was the Paxton Lynch? The Chiefs were going to trade up and draft Paxton Lynch, and the Denver Broncos beat them to the punch and traded up with Seattle to get Paxton Lynch. If the Chiefs had traded up for Paxton Lynch, they never would have had Patrick Mahomes. Like, what a sliding doors moment. But should they have been fired if they'd have made that mistake? Evidently not, because those same people now look like geniuses for drafting Patrick Mahomes. So I think owners should give GMs more leeway to make mistakes on quarterback trouble, because if you get that position right, you can be a great team. And I think that's what the Seahawks have to do. They've got to go and find a young, excellent quarterback. Not a good quarterback, an excellent quarterback. And that's going to be the priority.
Yeah, and the interesting part about that is there one in this draft? I'm not sure. I'm not even 100% sold on Caleb Williams. I know he's got a lot of the tools, but there's some things about him that I'm just unsure about. But with that being said, yes, I am all for trading picks or whatever it needs to be to find that quarterback, because that's the most important position. What I'm not okay with is trading a bunch of picks for players like safety or things that are unnecessary that we don't necessarily need to trade for. I want to see them make moves that put us into a position that we can be excited as fans about someone who's going to come in and help lead this team to somewhere else. Someone that can, when they get the ball in their hands, there's an opportunity every single time. Right. And it's not a knock on Geno, but, and I know people are going to go, well, he had the most comebacks this year. It's not about that. Like, I don't feel like when he has the balls in his hand every single time, it's not like I'm confident that he's going to lead us down and score. When Patrick Mahomes held the ball, I almost feel every single time he can lead the team down and score, regardless of who he has. And that's what I want. I want a player. And I actually felt like that with Russ, honestly. Like, he just seemed like the first halves always were no fun or no good or whatever. And he could turn it, but he had that magic. He could turn it around. You knew there was an opportunity once he had the ball in his hands, he was going to help win the game, whatever it is. That's what I want.
Yeah, completely with you. And I think you're right. Look, I think sometimes people conflate that us saying this means that we hate Geno Smith or we don't like him. I think he's a perfectly useful bridge for the Seahawks, but he is not going to lead the Seahawks to a Super Bowl, I'm afraid. And I think that the key is to find somebody who fits the description that you've just said there, Robbie, who ideally doesn't even, maybe get him this year and he doesn't start this year. But I'm also with you. I don't know if that player exists or is gettable within this class. I think that John Schneider, as we've spoken about this before, Robbie, I think he is interested in at least one player in this quarterback class. I think that's partly why they speak the way that they do. And I think they're sort of assessing their options. It would not surprise me if Drake May just slipped a little bit, whether they aggressively moved up to get him, because I think as much as I'm a bit suspicious of Drake May, I think John Schneider will love Drake May. I think there is a chance that they'll have enamored themselves with JJ McCarthy just because of the intel. Although, again, personally, I find his tape to be thoroughly unspectacular. And I think there's a chance that they will like Michael Penix because I think that arm is... I read somewhere, someone did a list, I think it was the 33rd team had quoted some company, Robbie, that said that Michael Penix had the 6th strongest arm in this draft class. And I nearly launched my laptop across the room in disgust because it was just... When I see stuff like that, I just think, somebody's being paid to do this. It's just preposterous.
Can I talk on the JJ McCarthy thing real fast? So you were clamoring on him the other day, and I couldn't figure it out. And then Brock Ewart went on and did the same thing. I was like, what am I missing? I just do not get it. And then someone put something out there the other day that I read, and I was like, maybe it's starting to turn me on a little bit. Maybe okay. Because I watched all his tape again, let me rephrase that. I even watched his highlights, and his highlights are not that spectacular. There's a couple throws that are like, okay, that was a really good throw. There's nothing that like just is jaw dropping. But what they said is that his team was so good, and the players that he had around him, that he was just untapped, and there has that untapped potential on what you don't know about him. Now that makes a little more sense to me. Okay, I could get behind that theory, but it's just hard. I'm not seeing it on tape.
I think. Well, look, I think with Brock, I think huge respect for Brock. I think Brock's. I have to say, I think he got a little bit carried away this week. I think he's so focused on JJ McCarthy, the person, and wow, third down statistics were good. But then when you actually watch some of those third downs, yeah, he does have some good completions. He also has some bad ones, bad incompletions as well on third down. So it's not as if he's flawless in that category. I think people have got a bit carried away on the intangible stuff. Now, that's what we were talking about, Robbie. But the difference for me was I had no idea why he was being projected in the first round at all, because the tape does not show a first-round player. But then listening to him at the combine and watching him at the combine, it made me realize I just felt like I'd had a glimpse of maybe what teams had. And that I can imagine there are GMs, coaches, owners who think, I want that person to lead my franchise. Or that there are people out there that think he can be our alpha in the locker room at quarterback. And having spoken to people like Scott McCloughan about quarterbacks, I should have put the clip up and loaded the clip up on here, where I might be able to dig it out, Robbie. Where he said, when I said to him, what do you look for in a quarterback? He said, I want someone who can go in the huddle and just go, easy guys, like, I've got this. And that can convert third downs and that can get teams in and out of games and just keep things ticking along, and that can make the big play when you need them to make the play. And I think a lot of teams will convince themselves that JJ McCarthy is that guy. Now, I think Brock and others have understood that and talk about that, but have maybe just gone a bit too far. Because I think also when you actually watch the tape, it's very hard to be excited about him because he is a thoroughly unspectacular watch. And that's part of the problem. So working out, okay, yeah, intangibles, A+, tape, probably a C, in my opinion, or a C+. What is he? Can he ever be special? How is he going to handle not having the Michigan setup with Harbaugh and all of that comes with that as coach when he gets to the NFL? And then when you look at some of these other players, Robbie, they're not as maybe as intangible laden as he is. But if I need someone to throw an absolute bomb downfield, Michael Penix can do it. Drake May can do it. Drake May physically impressive. Drake May makes the improbable happen. He's also very frustrating at times to watch. Michael Penix is less frustrating to watch, but I worry about Michael Penix when I think teams might just blitz the crap out of him and he might not be able to get out of the pocket and move and create. And then can he beat the blitz? Can he learn to be fantastic at beating the blitz? So these are the things that I think you all have to consider, but I do think there's a chance that John Schneider will be looking at this class and thinking maybe even those three, Robbie, those three quarterbacks, they're three quarterbacks that I'm willing to consider. So we'll see what happens. But if they can't get them, or if they decide actually no, then they're going to have to pivot and go in a different direction and you go on to next year. But you can't just keep going to next year and the year after and the year after, because what we'll find is it's 2028 and we'll still be winning 9 games every year. And we'll just become one of those teams. Dull, uninspiring, boring, in contention for the playoffs every year, but never being able to take the next step. And more importantly, Robbie, probably never beating the bloody Niners. So, Anyway, we've got a couple of super chats. We'll get them first, and then we'll get back onto free agency. Matt says, could the results of free agency for the Seahawks impact their plans for the draft as far as determining if they need to move back and get more picks? What do you think, Robbie?
I don't think so. I think they're going to probably, other than a trade, I think they're probably going to go best player available. I think they're going to stick to their guns on that. I don't think it's going to matter. Could surprise you, could be a wide receiver or someone that you not necessarily need. But I think that in their mind, they're probably going to go best player available and stick their guns on that. So I don't think free agents is going to impact the draft all that much.
I think it might do. For example, if they lose Leonard Williams and they can't replace him adequately, I think it may put more pressure on them to get a defensive tackle. And then what they might do is pivot and go, okay, if we can't get Leonard Williams, we'll then spend X amount on a different position in free agency and solve that need instead. And then we'll, maybe they take Byron Murphy or something at 16, or make sure that they trade back so they can get into range to take Johnny Newton or Ruka Rororo. That's the kind of thing that can impact the draft a little bit there. I also think one of the things, Robbie, that I mentioned this to Jeff in a DM yesterday, and I think I might have mentioned it to you, I'm not sure, but I wonder a little bit whether all of this aggressive creation of cap room, Robbie, is to try and fill as many needs as possible in the next 2 or 3 weeks to justify trading up for the quarterback. Because if you are going to give up a draft haul to go and get a QB in the draft, you can't be going in there with 5 other needs, can you? If you're putting all your eggs in the quarterback basket, then you need to make sure that you have a roster. And I wonder if a little bit of that is, let's create a cap room so that we can then go and sign him, and then we can trade up. So right. I think it could be interesting.
And that's what I was saying. Other than a trade, I don't really see it impacting the free agency or the free agency impacting draft too much, unless there was a drastic change or trade that would allow them to go up to say grab a quarterback. Then maybe that's the thing. I hope that even if they lose Leonard Williams, they don't drastically change their plan and be like, well, now we have to trade back, because what if one of these epic tackles fall to us or something at 16 and you're going to trade back just because you lost Leonard Williams? I just don't agree with that philosophy. I think you should stick with the best player available and go from there and then fill it as you can later. But I would hate for them to see to pivot their whole draft plan just to do that, just for losing one guy.
And K Soon says, no risks it No, I think he's referring to the no risk it for a biscuit quote from Bruce Arians. I think he's going with that. Yeah, look, sometimes you do have to take a risk, especially at quarterback. If you wait forever for the perfect quarterback to drop into your lap, then it'll never happen. And the perfect quarterback, Andrew Luck, didn't last very long in the NFL. The next perfect quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, has not looked particularly great. No one was calling Patrick Mahomes the perfect quarterback coming into the league. In fact, Daniel Jeremiah didn't have him in his top 50 a month before the draft, and he has become the perfect quarterback. So, sometimes, what we think is an elite player or a great player, or what we think is somebody who just, has got some flaws, you don't really know sometimes until you see what they can do. So, I'm seeing, so there's all sorts going on, Robbie. It's been, I've actually quite enjoyed it. There's been a steady stream of news doing the rounds. And I believe that the NFL Network are doing a live show at the same time as us, probably copying us. But Curtis has just said that Ian Rappaport says Bobby Wagner unlikely to return to Seattle per source. So that's not a big surprise. I thought there was no chance of him coming back. He didn't have a very good year last year, and I think they're gonna go in a different direction there. If you have any super chats, bang them in. We will come to them. There's a couple of questions that have come in on Twitter that I want to put to you, Robbie. So this is from a guy called Jimmy. He's got two questions. I thought they were quite interesting, so I'm going to ask you them. First of all, what would you think of trading a late round pick for Joey Bosa or Khalil Mack?
I mean, yeah, a late round pick for Bosa.
Well, the situation is that the Chargers are in so much cap misery, because we probably need to flesh this out, because people will probably have the same reaction that you've had. So where are they? Effective cap space. The Chargers have got the 30 million in the red. So there's basically them and the Dolphins are in the worst cap hell imaginable. And they are open to, they've got some levers they can pull with Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Keenan Allen, and Mike Williams, who, just to read the cap numbers out for those guys, Khalil Mack, 38.5, Joey Bosa, 36.6, Keenan Allen, 34.7, and Mike Williams, 32.4. Their GM has just been appointed by the Raiders. Good luck, Raiders fans, because that is a nightmare. So they've got some levers to pull there. They can get rid of, well, any of those players. They could cut them, and they can easily get into the black in terms of cap space, Robbie. But there's sort of talk that they're open to talk trades. Otherwise, they're going to have to release them. So if they're going to release Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack anyway, I guess you could probably be talking about late round picks for them. However, that would then mean inheriting their salaries. So with Khalil Mack, I think Curtis can correct me if I'm wrong. That would mean you have to pay his base salary, Khalil Mack's that is, which is 17.5 million. And I think you'd have to pay his roster bonus as well, which is another 5.5. So I guess the team could take that on, though. The Chargers could take that on. So it's an expensive cap hit is what I'm saying. And then with Joey Bosa, he has 15 million base salary and a 7 million roster bonus. So you could get them for a throwaway pick, but then the cap hit is big. So
I'd say yes to Bosa. I'd say no to Mack. I think
that's interesting.
I would trade for Joey Bosa.
So I think I possibly would feel the other way around, Robbie. Because although Joey Bosa is 28 and I think Khalil Mack's 33, Joey Bosa, unless I'm mistaken, hasn't he played something like 8 games in the last 2 seasons? Like, he's been really, really injury prone. He's been very, very injured. And Khalil Mack has just come off possibly the best year of his career. I think I'm right in saying he had 17 and a half sacks last season. So Khalil Mack is is a player who has had durability and has still produced at an elite level last year. Like, he was one of the best for sacks last season. So Bosa's got the name recognition. Bosa's got age on his side. If you could guarantee a healthy Joey Bosa for a couple of years, I'd agree with you. But I think if you were going to pick somebody to produce in, quite quickly and give you bang for your buck, I think it'd probably be Khalil Mack. But then it would have to be a throwaway pick. Like, I would not want to be paying third rounders and stuff like that for either of these guys. But I think it's an interesting question. I'm open. I think what I'd say, Rob, is I'm open to either because they're both very good players, but it would seriously depend on the cost. And I think with Bosa, I'd want to see him cut and then do a reasonable deal that was team friendly to get him in. And I just don't see that. Do you know what my biggest fear is? Is that he gets cut by the Chargers and wants to go and play with his brother, and then decides that 2024 is the ideal time to have a 17-game fully healthy season playing across from his brother in San Francisco, and that would be sod's law for the Seahawks. But I do think Khalil Mack could be a good option. And then the other question here from Jimmy is, what about Jeremy Chin playing the Kyle Hamilton role? And how about a Brooks Queen duo? Well, I'm not up for the Brooks Queen duo because I think it would cost too much. So unless it's dirt cheap, I am not bothered about that. Jeremy Chin seems to be being linked a lot, Robbie. I can't tell whether that's just, well, he has the same body as Kyle Hamilton, therefore 2 + 2 = 5. Chin has not been healthy either. After a fast start to his career, things have kind of stalled for him. I guess with him, Robbie, it's about the price, isn't it?
Yeah, I've seen this multiple times, and I'm not sure why people are throwing it out there. I don't know if it was, where there's smoke, there's fire kind of thing, but I don't know. He seems like he'd be a good, I don't think he'd be very, very expensive either. And, come in on a prove it deal. And I think it'd be, good way to get him in, kind of develop under, Mike and see what he could do. That would be a great idea. Again, it's one of these cheaper safeties that you can snag and could have long-term benefits.
Just confirmation in Ian Rappaport's report. He says Bobby Wagner is expected to test the market and it's currently viewed as unlikely that he returns to the Seahawks, source said. Coming off a career-high 183 tackles, Wagner joins a talented off-the-ball linebacker group in free agency. So it appears the Seahawks are moving on. The fact that that's coming out now, Robbie, does that suggest that the Seahawks are ready to rock with other moves? Do you think that... Do you think that they will go after sort of Patrick Queen? Like, I've thought that was quite lazy. That it's just connecting the dots because he was at Baltimore. But the time goes on a little bit. There's something I'm going to show you in a second, an article. I'm starting to wonder whether they will go down that road or that they've actually got some active plan at linebacker because it's a bad linebacker draft. And I wonder if I don't know if it'd be Jordan Brooks because I think if it was, he'd probably be signed by now. But maybe they go after Devin White instead. I've always thought that Devin White was somebody that the Seahawks would love to have.
Yeah, I could see Mike McDonald wanting one of his guys from Baltimore and bringing him over. But I also thought the same thing, that it was just one of those things where it's like people are connecting the dots just because he played there. But I could see, Mike maybe wanting one of his guys and saying, hey, we got to go get one of my guys from Baltimore and bring him over. And if he brings him over, again, it depends on the cost. I wouldn't be super mad about it, but I just don't want to spend a bunch of money at linebacker. We've been down this road already, and I don't want to do it again.
Yeah, I don't want like a $17.5 million deal.
Yeah.
Like, what would be reasonable? Like 12?
12, 13 maybe, yeah.
Like that, but that sounds unrealistic, doesn't it? But that's where I would be on that. Maybe he likes Mike McDonald that much. I think that could be an interesting dynamic, actually. I don't think players wanted to come and play in Seattle, Robbie, especially on defense. I think they thought this defense does not produce stats. Like, who's the last person who had great sack numbers in Seattle? Whereas the only stats that were ever great in Seattle was Bobby Wagner and the other linebacker collecting tackles because the defensive front was so crap and the scheme sucked. Like, now, so why would you want to come and play in Seattle? Whereas I think people might actually, if you're a defensive player, you might actually look at Mike McDonald and go, get me with that guy. Like that guy just produced like the best defense in the league last year. He elevated like this guy, and this guy. So let me get some of that. So I think it might actually be quite interesting to see if players want to come and play for Mike McDonald on defense in a way that they didn't want to play for Seattle. So we'll see. And I guess, look, Frankie Louvu's another option there, isn't he? And I think he's very much of that sort of ilk. And I'm just intrigued by Devin White. I wouldn't want to spend big money on him. I just look at Roquan Smith was a very good player in Chicago, but his play went up a notch in Baltimore. And I just wonder whether Devin White could have that same kind of elevation under Mike McDonald. And you get a player who was once considered to be absolutely tremendous, who's just fallen on slightly hard times in his career. Maybe he could come in and play middle linebacker alongside somebody else. And, you know, it could really benefit the Seahawks and they could get some really good value there. So that's something that would interest me a little bit. So I want to share this. Let me share the screen, Robbie, and show you this article that was... Can you see that?
Yep.
So this is the Jeremy Fowler, Dan Graziano article that came out this morning. And, you know, it's not Schefter. So it's not as if we can take all of this to the bank. However, there were a couple of things that mentioned the Seahawks. So this one's on Leonard Williams said, the Seahawks said that the Seahawks, Leonard Williams could get good money. And then Jeremy Fowler said the Seahawks are expected to ramp up their efforts to sign Williams, who played well coming off last year's trade. Getting something done before Monday would be optimal for Seattle. So, well, it's 10 to midnight Sunday night here in the UK. So there's still time to get it done today, but time is running out if they're going to get it done before Monday. So we will see. Then there's this bit here that says, Ravens following McDonald. Dan Graziano, I've heard a lot of speculation about which, if any, Ravens defensive free agents could follow Baltimore defensive coordinator Matt McDonald to Seattle now that he's the head coach of the Seahawks. In order of likelihood, based on conversations with my sources, I'd rank them as follows in terms of chances to land in Seattle. 1, Patrick Queen. 2, Jadeveon Clowney. 3, Geno Stone. So that article there is saying that of all the defensive players, Queen's the most likely to end up in Seattle. Clowney is the second most likely, and Geno Stone is in third place. There was one other thing that was interesting. I'm going to try and find it. It was about pass rushers. Here we are. Dan Graziano. I expect Vikings edge rusher Danielle Hunter to hit the market and do very well. His benchmark is probably the deal the Bears gave Montez Sweat. Coincidentally, Sweat and Hunter have the same agent, so they'd know how to do a deal like this. Though not specifically for Hunter, the Seahawks, Colts, and Commanders are 3 of the likely many teams expected to be active in the edge rush market. So what do you make of that, Robbie? Because so there's a lot to get at there. Let's start with that last one first. The suggestion that the Seahawks are going to be in the edge rush market. What do you think about that? I watched some Danielle Hunter tape from 2023 today off the back of that. And I have to say, Robbie, I don't want them to spend big money on Danielle Hunter. I think a lot of his sacks they weren't great pass rush moves. He kind of fell into a lot of them. He had a great sack year, but he's had injury issues in the past. He's approaching 30. I don't want them to spend big money on Danielle Hunter. But what did you make of that? And I suppose the possibility of them dabbling in the pass rush free agent market.
Again, I need to go look at, who all the free agent, defensive ends are, the edge rushers. I don't know if it's necessarily one of these big name guys either. It could be somebody else. They might have somebody in mind that they think might just fit their scheme better, who maybe hasn't had a chance to kind of get after it or was just kind of in the wrong system. But again, it's one of the reasons why I think I would be okay with them taking a shot at Bosa. Mac, I just think it's too expensive and a little too old for me. But think if Bosa could stay healthy, it'd be super intriguing, and I think it'd be very interesting, especially for a late round pick. I don't know. I mean, it's defensive line, offensive line. If they go either way, I'm down for either one. So we can never have too many edge rushers, right? So it'll work.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know. The Mac one really does intrigue me because I've always liked Khalil Mack. I've always kind of enjoyed his style of play, and for me, he's the kind of person that I can imagine Mike McDonald still getting a lot out of. And look, he got a lot out of Jadeveon Clowney and Kyle Van Noy last year. And I just think he could be somebody that could be a bit of a difference maker for you. But I kind of come back to this, Robbie. If the Seahawks are not legit Super Bowl contenders next year, kind of what's the point? Like, if you're going to bring him in, let's say you trade a 5th round pick for him to just acquire him, and then his salary's, let's say that they eat the bonus, and it's $17.5 million or whatever it is to go and get him. All Khalil Mack does then is keep Derek Hall off the field. And you spent a high 2nd round pick on Derek Hall a year ago. Like, I'd happily take a year to see if you can get Derek Hall into somebody who's an actual contributor in year 2. Because you've got Nwosu, you've got Maffei, and you've got Hall. We don't know what's going to happen with Darrell Taylor.
He ain't coming back.
Well, I mean, who knows? But you've got 3. But if you bring someone like Mack in or Daniil Hunter, they're playing because they're going to get massive, massive money. And Nwosu's on massive money. So what then? Does Boye Maffei become a bit part player? Does Derek Hall just become a reserve who plays a tiny percentage of the snaps? If so, what the hell? Why did you draft him? So I'm almost in the position of saying to Mike McDonald, look, we spent a top 40 pick on Derek Hall. Like, you had John Schneider said they had a 1st round grade on him a year ago. Like, you've got to make him into somebody as opposed to spending a fortune on a big name edge. And if it's a case of, look, we just need to fill the sort of the void left from Darrell Taylor, who's moving on, do you think, Robbie, they'd be better off going and seeing how much like a Josh Uche is going to cost from New England, or maybe even reuniting with Jadeveon Clowney and seeing if he'll come and play for Mike McDonald again? Because then that's somebody who, like for Clowney, for example, can play in a lot of different places, can't he, on the defensive line? He's not necessarily like an outside linebacker, although he kind of pivoted to being a lighter player last year under McDonald. But do you think that's a better bet for them than splurging on a big name who will expect to play a high percentage of downs?
Yeah, probably. I mean, you're probably not going to want to spend a lot of money on someone who's going to be a rotational player, right? You know, like some of these guys that you're mentioning, they're going to be players that are going to want to play, are going to get to play a lot and take away from some of the development of the younger guys. And that's certainly not something I want to see happen. Yeah, they had a 1st round grade on Hall, and that doesn't mean after 1 year they could have been wrong and realize it now. I don't know. Also, you're banking on Uchenna Nwosu coming back from injury, and there's things in the play. I mean, we had Darrell Taylor playing a lot last year, which was god awful. So, I mean, if you take a chance on a guy you think is going to have better output than that, then absolutely.
Yeah. And then the other 2, what about does that, the fact that they're talking about most likely Baltimore players to come to Seattle, does that make you think it's any more likely that Queen?
No, I don't think so. I just thought I'm not sure if I just think it's lazy reporting or if it's just wild speculation. I don't really know. I mean, it could be, it's possible, and they could just be putting the pieces together as a need thing and thinking maybe salary cap wise they can't afford Stone, so they probably won't go that direction, and they'll rather spend the money on Queen and then see if they can get McDonald or Clowney cheaper. I don't know. I don't read too much into that, to be honest.
And then the Leonard Williams one. I mean, it isn't done, is it? So what do you think?
No, I mean, I saw Snyder talking. I don't remember what he was on. It was Arkansas or something. He was talking to somebody about, how he, Leonard Williams was, a high priority for them and wanted to go get him and get him back. But again, the price has got to be right. They can't go and overpay the guy just to overpay him. And that's what I'm saying. I don't want them to outbid themselves before he gets to free agency. Like if don't do that, let him go then to free agency and be like, okay, what's the highest offer you got? Do you feel comfortable matching that? And if you do, go match it. If you don't, then don't, and move on.
Yeah, I'm really torn on it because I think he's a really good player, and I think that there's been too much talk about second round picks and age and stuff like that. And I think there's not been enough talk about how good Leonard Williams is. And I think a few people have kind of revised history a little bit, saying I didn't really do anything, and he didn't. I mean, I thought he played really well. I thought there was a couple of games where he was easily Seattle's best defensive player towards the end of the season. And I think they've wanted that kind of player for a long, long time. And I also think that just because he's 29, I don't think that necessarily means that he's got like 3 years left and that's it. I mean, like, look at Calais Campbell. The bloke's nearly 40. I'm not saying that Leonard Williams is necessarily going to play as long as that, but I think, you know, the chances are that he could play another 5 years of quality football, and that would be worth having. I think it all comes down to price. It really is just, if he's going to get a Justin Madubuike deal, no thanks. If he's going to get a Draymond Jones deal, Robbie, I think I'd probably be down with that. I don't have a problem with that, especially if they end up moving on from Draymond Jones down the line in training camp, when you can make a more significant saving and you might be able to flip him for another player or flip him for a late round draft pick or something, and you save, I think it's $11 million. So if they do that, I think it would easily be justifiable to sort of transfer Jones's salary to Leonard Williams, who I think is a really good player.
Yeah, and someone just mentioned this in the chat, which I completely spaced and forgot about, the Mike Morse thing for Michigan, right? He has that connection, you know, to Mike McDonald. And so I think that's another interesting player. And I think you rated him really high last year too, didn't you?
No, he was a player that, like, in the he was like viewed as a second rounder by the national media. And when you watched him, he was very frustrating. Like, when he played Michigan State in 2022, he played like it was the last game of his life, because it was seen as a bit of a revenge game, and they destroyed Michigan State, and he was fantastic. But then you turn on the game the week after, and he'd go through the motions, and you kind of thought, where's that? I want to see him playing high intensity all the time. Then he had a stinking combine, and he went from sort of a consensus day 2 pick, second round pick, to somebody who was going to get drafted later on. What did they get him in the 5th round in the end or something like that?
Yeah.
So I think in the 5th round, it was like, well, why not? You know, shot to nothing type of thing. And then they tried to bulk him up and make him a 300-pound defensive lineman. I think it's going to be interesting to see what he does next year. There is a player in there, but getting him to be consistently fierce is something. I'll tell you something, Robbie, just on the subject of consistently fierce. I watched a player for the first time this weekend I had not scouted, and I wish I'd scouted him earlier now. Brennan Jackson from Washington State, pass rusher, who I may have the opportunity to have an interview with this week. He plays like every snap is the last one of his life. It is absolutely incredible how much intensity and passion he has for the game. And then I actually had a look at his combine numbers, Robbie, and it's scary. He has the same arm length, the same hand size, the same 10-yard split as Max Crosby. They are basically the same body type. And when you watched Max Crosby, nobody thought Max Crosby was going to be Max Crosby. That's why he went to the 4th round. But he played every snap like, I am going to go after this, just like Brennan Jackson. So I'm not suggesting for a second that Brennan Jackson is Max Crosby. I'm just saying that, I mean, like, Max Crosby ran a fantastic short shuttle for a start, and Brennan Jackson would have to do that as well. But what I'm just saying is that Jackson has got some of the traits that I find really interesting. He's got athletic traits. He's got intensity and passion for the game, and toughness and relentless motor. And I just wonder whether he's somebody who you could find early day 3. I've got him in day 2 on my board that's been updated since I watched him. I just wonder whether he's somebody who could be very, very, very interesting. So just saying.
I love it when you find these little diamonds in the rough and start mentioning them, because you get me all excited about them and they end up going to someone else, and it just pisses me off. So
yeah, I very much look forward to watching him play for the Ravens.
Yeah, right, there you go. But I mean, back to the Mike Morris thing, and someone even said it in the comments, like, coach the players you have, and we got a coach that can do that now. You know what I mean? Like, Pete was really good at coaching the corners and things like that. And let's see what Mike McDonald can do and how he can coach some of these guys up. I'd be really interested to see how he kind of gets these guys to get going, and what he does to get them motivated.
I think that's probably the most exciting thing about this season, Robbie. And it kind of, there has been a few times when I've had to sort of remind myself that the one thing about this year is it doesn't, whatever they do in free agency or the draft, it's going to be a new coaching staff working with the players. So everybody kind of starts afresh. Like, it's interesting to see, like, if Carroll had stayed, I can well imagine what the 2024 season would look like for Boye Mafe, Derek Hall, the defensive linemen in general, for the cornerbacks, for the safeties and everything like that. You can easily imagine what would have happened, Robbie. And you can easily imagine that the defense would be absolute garbage again, like it has been for like however many years in a row. Whereas like now I'm massively interested to see which of these players is going to take a step up. What is the ceiling actually for somebody like Mafe, for example, like playing within this system, a system which is going to do a bit of manufactured production for him, but is also going to put him in the best places to impact games. How is he going to elevate the play of the secondary to maybe create more turnovers? Because that's something that for a long time now the Seahawks haven't really done much of. So it's just going to be so interesting. Same with Ryan Grubb on the offense. Like, you watch Washington's offense and there are so many interesting little wrinkles that it has that you think, I can't wait to see the NFL version of that with Seattle's offense. And it is so much more interesting. It is so interesting. I can't believe, when I think back to it, and again, no disrespect to Pete, but I can't believe we had to endure years of his staff being Ken Norton Jr. and Clint Hurt at defensive coordinator, and people like Shane Waldron, who Jackson Smith and Jigba at the Super Bowl couldn't even be bothered to hide his disdain for Shane Waldron. That's how bad he was. And now, Robbie, it's not just that the head coach is an impressive individual. That staff looks great. It gives you a positive feeling, doesn't it? Like, could they have a couple more like experienced, grizzled types on there somewhere? Yeah. But it's interesting, isn't it, Robbie? And it'll be interesting to see what they can do with the current players and how the draft shapes into things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's why when mentioning Mike Morrison, someone had brought it up, it just adds to the intrigue of the players that we have, and see, the position that they could get put into to succeed within the offense or defense or whatever. It's going to be exciting to see a whole different regime and they're taking over, and just to see how it plays out. It's going to be very, very, very different than what we're used to.
Have you noticed, though, that Mike McDonald has started talking a bit like John Schneider?
A little bit.
Have a listen.
A little bit.
He uses words that you
Yeah.
think, like John's already having an influence on you there. Like, the way he says things and words that he's using, you're thinking, when I was doing all those like press conference watches during the coaching search, which was like a million years ago now, by the way, like, he did not speak this way. And now he sounds like he spends nearly all of his time with John Schneider, and it's had an influence on the way that he speaks. It's quite interesting when you like pick up on it and you listen for it. So I think the final thing to chat about, Robbie, because we've done an hour, is, and we've got another super chat. I'll come to that first. This one from Drew says, love the blog, Rob. Been following since 2010. Any chance Drake May slips out of the top 10? JJ McCarthy doesn't feel like a toolsy John Schneider QB, and May seems to have lost some buzz. Well, first of all, Drew, thank you, one, for the super chat, and two, for putting up with my thoughts for 14 years. I really appreciate that. And you were one of the old school lot since the blog started in 2008. So thank you for sticking with us. I don't know how much you've been following. Robbie, I wrote about this the other day. So you had a handful of people talking about Drake May potentially falling. And a lot of people put it down to, oh, it's that time of year and it's silly season. I don't think it is, because at no point during the college football season did I say Drake May is a surefire top 5 pick. There was nothing about his tape that made me feel like that confident. I would regularly say in my articles, I think he's a first rounder, but I don't think he's as good as everyone's saying. And it feels a little bit like, I'm not just saying it because I said that. It feels a little bit like people are either caught up or they've just spoken to people in the league and they've told them what the reality is. Because on Twitter, all the way through the college football season, it was utter nonsense about he could go first overall. It's 1A and 1B with Caleb Williams. And there was no evidence of that whatsoever. There just wasn't. I think Drake May, unfortunately, has been overrated throughout this entire process. And it's going to make him, if he does slip a little bit, people are going to talk about it being a slip. And it won't be. He will just be going in the range he should have always gone. Now, Lance Zierlein said on Move the Sticks podcast that someone had said to him he could be a Will Levis type fall. I don't think he will fall as far as Will Levis to the 33rd pick, but it goes to show that he might not go third overall and he might last a little bit. And then Tony Pauline said in his podcast that he thinks he could go in the middle of the first round, but then Tony did a mock draft and put him at number 6, I think it was. So there's a bit of chatter, and the people have been saying JJ McCarthy could go third, or JJ McCarthy could be the third quarterback off the board, and that's really been building over the last week as well. Could Drake May fall? Yes. And I think if it happens, I think there's a chance, at least a chance, that the Seahawks will trade up and go and get him, Robbie, because as Drew said, rightly said, McCarthy might not be, but May does feel a lot like a John Schneider type quarterback. And I'll say this, Robbie, I might not rate Drake May as highly as maybe some others do, but I think if you could bring him in and redshirt him for a year, you could be onto something with him in 12 months' time. But I do think he needs to work on his footwork and his consistency and his decision-making to maximize what he is. I don't think his arm is as strong as some people say, but it is a decent arm. There are some tools there, but I think he needs serious work. What do you think about all of that, Robbie?
I think there's a possibility he drops. I do think there's some of that things where it's just that chatter in that time of year, because it's around the same time people were talking about, what's his name? I don't know why his name's literally just slipped my mind, talking about him being the first overall pick and he ended up going in the 4th round. Who am I thinking of? Help me out. Quarterback.
Hendon Hooker.
No, not Hooker. Although that was another one people were talking about him going in the 1st round 2 years ago.
Malik Willis?
Yeah, thank you. There's a lot of that stuff going around. And I think realistically, Malik Willis. I think realistically, I don't think he gets past the Patriots at 3. Unless they trade down. I just don't see it happening. I know what people are going to say. Well, is he, what's the difference between him and like Mac Jones? I think he's a better athlete than Mac Jones. I think he has a better arm than Mac Jones. I just think he's a better player all around. I don't think it's going to shy the Patriots away from selecting another quarterback, because why wouldn't they? And when we just sat here and talked about you got to take your shots on quarterbacks when you have an opportunity, why would we be any different than they would? They're going to take their shots too. I think it's an opportunity for them to get a quarterback in the top 3. You don't get it very often. And they did just trade their starting quarterback, he got benched, but
I think trading Mac Jones probably would have happened anyway. But I think there is some look, if they don't sign anybody, if there's no, there's a bit of talk that they might be in the Mayfield sweepstakes, and obviously he's re-signed with Tampa Bay. If they don't do something at quarterback, then that's significant. And signing Jacoby Brissett is not significant. That's a bridge signing. Then that would be all signs pointing towards them going quarterback. I just wonder whether they will convince themselves to go with JJ McCarthy at 3 instead of Drake May. But I could easily see Drake May still going number 3. I just won't be surprised if he lasts a little bit. But if Drake May does go 3rd overall, and then if JJ McCarthy goes, I don't think it'd last. I could easily, if Minnesota loses Kirk Cousins, I think they'll be aggressive. But I tell you what, Robbie, let's say Drake May goes 3, and let's say Minnesota keeps Kirk Cousins, I then find it very difficult to work out where McCarthy goes because I don't know
Denver.
whether. Yeah, but there's a couple of things with that. So 6 New York could be an option, but I as much as we're saying like is McCarthy this is a fit for that, I don't know if JJ McCarthy is spectacular enough on tape to feel like they've got buyer's remorse on Daniel Jones. I think they might think, well, are we just not drafting another Daniel Jones at the exact same spot that we drafted Daniel Jones, number 6 overall? And I'm not sure is a Daboll fit. And then Atlanta, would they do it? Maybe. It's just again. I mean, they might do if they lose out on Kirk Cousins. And then you've got Denver and the Raiders. But the thing you've got to remember about Sean Payton is people are kind of pairing Denver with a rookie quarterback. Sean Payton hates young quarterbacks. And JJ McCarthy's 21. So if he's going to draft a rookie, I think he's more likely to go Bo Nix or Michael Penix. Probably Bo Nix feels more of the type. I don't mind mentioning it. I think I did it in my last mock draft anyway. I think what the Broncos are going to do, Robbie, is I think they're going to draft somebody at number 12 who's not a quarterback. And then I think they're going to trade. They don't have a second round pick. I think they're going to trade next year's first and something else. Because if you look what the New Orleans Saints did that twice, didn't they? Traded future firsts to get back into the first round while Peyton was there when he was like pulling the strings in New Orleans. I think they'll do that. So I think they'll take a pass rusher or a defensive tackle or somebody like that, or a receiver at number 12, and then I think they will go and get Bo Nix later on. And then with the Raiders, I think if the Raiders are going to draft a quarterback, they're going to go with Michael Penix just because of the arm. So I mean, I'm not, I'm the person sat here telling you, Robbie, that McCarthy was a top 5 pick, and now I'm saying it'd be hard to work out where he goes if New England take May at 3. But I think this is the fascinating thing about this draft class is that there are lots of different things that could happen. If the quarterback, I think it, to some extent, Robbie, I'd be very frustrated if they don't come out with a quarterback in this draft because I think they have to do it eventually. Otherwise, they can't just keep kicking the can down the road. But it would open up interesting options at number 16, wouldn't it? And I increasingly think Brock Bowers might last,
I would run to the podium. I wouldn't even hesitate. Run.
See, I was thinking about this yesterday, though. Because if you take Brock Bowers, like, can you make the most of all of that investment in weapons? Like, can you get to the end of next season feeling like you have got your 30 millions worth of DK Metcalf, your top 20 picks worth of Jackson Smith and Jigba, your 15 millions worth of Tyler Lockett, and your 16th overall picks, Brock Bowers? Can all of those players get enough production and enough worth to this team to feel like that was worth doing?
You got to take a chance. With a player that talented fall into you at 16, I don't really care. You'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. You got to have a play. And he's not a guy. He just not seems like the guy who's like a diva wide receiver who's like, I need the ball. He's the guy who's going to come in and do all the dirty work as well. He's going to block. He's going to do all the things. He's going to be huge for you on third down. Lockett, JSN, and Metcalf are going to open up the middle of the field for him. You absolutely take a chance on it. We've never had a tight end like that guy. Well, maybe not never, but this is a guy you got to go get him if he's there. I wouldn't worry about whether or not you can use all the weapons. You can use all the weapons you can have.
I generally agree, but I think it's something that you have to consider a little bit, just because there's only so much production to go around. Like if you're going to feed DK, if that's like part of the plan, and it seems like inferred by a number of people that it is going to be the plan to feed DK. If you then also want to get Jackson Smith and Jigba far more involved in the offense, and you're bringing back Tyler Lockett, like what could Brock Bowers' stat line be in year 1? Like if Brock Bowers had 450 yards and 6 touchdowns is that worth the 16th overall pick? Like that's the kind of thing. And then, you know,
but he's opening. But here's the thing: his stats might not show it, right? I mean, you can draft a guard or a tackle and be like, well, what are the real statistics? Not giving up sacks, or I mean, Brock Bowers is going to open up holes for the running game. He's gonna open up the middle of the field for passing lanes. He's going to help spring open some of the wide receivers. He's going to do a lot in the running and the passing game that makes it. He might not have all the glorious stats of yards after catch or yards at all, but he could do a lot of the things that teams will have to scheme for him and take him into account. And it gives Geno another third down weapon, which is desperately needed.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a hard discussion because I think there's no right or wrong answer on this.
Well, look at the 49ers. They've got a lot of the same weapons, right? They've got Debo, they got McCaffrey.
They also got Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, that's true. They got Shanahan, but I mean, they've got the offense, so they've got all the players.
I think part of the problem, though, is like I say, is that so somebody's messaging in the live chat, and I understand the point that he's making. I'll address that, and then I'll sort of make the point I was going to make. He's saying Michael's saying we don't have the luxury of drafting a wide receiver at 20 and then a tight end at 16. And there was another comment that he said that said an offensive weapon over a trench guy reminds me of trading away Max Unger. The problem is that to combat what Michael's saying there is that if Brock Bowers is a top 5 player in this draft and has fallen because, let's say, other needs and the fact that he's not a prototype tight end size at 6'3", 240, he's not Kelsey. He's not Kelsey size. He's not Kittle size. If he lasts to 16 because of that, are you looking at an opportunity whereby you could draft a player who is unbelievably talented over an offensive lineman who may never get close to his level of potential? Because it would be frustrating 2 years down the line to be stuck with a average guard, let's say, if then the Rams took Bowers at 19 and turned him into one of the, a perennial all-pro as a tight end mismatch weapon. Like that would be that the Rams being at 19 worries me a little bit with that, because if they took him and he ended up being amazing, then you'd be screwed. Or not screwed, but you'd be kicking yourself for the sake of taking a trenches player. But to combat sort of the point that Robbie's making as well, I do think you have to have an idea in your mind as to how does this all look. Otherwise, if it is simply about go and get an amazing player, let's say this: if the Seahawks had the 5th overall pick this year, Robbie, and let's say the top 3 picks were the quarterbacks, 4th was Marvin Harrison Jr., and the 5th you were on the board at 5, and Rome Odunze was top of your board, would you take Rome Odunze? Because then that's just too much at receiver. But you can't have enough weapons. Like, do you see what I mean? Like, but then you could argue, well, other teams have these many weapons. So, there has to be a plan of we're going to get this guy in, and this is how we're going to make use of that 16th overall pick. And I just wonder sometimes, like, the top tight ends who are massively productive tend to be their second targets on their teams. Does that make sense? Or their first targets in the case of Kelsey. If Bowers is the 4th target in Seattle, he's going to get a 4th set of stats, isn't he? And then can you justify 16th overall pick for that? That's a big question mark, in my opinion. I'm not saying I wouldn't do it. I'm just saying I think it's an interesting conversation. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, and again, let me just clarify, because I saw somebody said he was not a great blocker. He's not like a Rob Gronkowski type of blocker, but he's still a good blocker. I mean, he's gonna get in there, he's gonna do the dirty work. So I think he'd be a great player. And again, it also depends on how the board falls. Who else is there at 16? I'm just saying I think he'd be a great player to fall at 16 because I didn't think he would. And that's the discussion we're having, right? If he's there at 16 and the board doesn't fall the way we want to, I would absolutely take him in a heartbeat, and I wouldn't think twice about it.
One of the reasons why I would consider it, I know we've kind of gone off on a complete tangent here. We are going to wrap up very shortly. But, the one of the reasons why I would take him, Robbie, is I think if that happens, I think it's because Troy Fatanu's gone and I mean, Fuaga's not going to get out of the top 10. I'm telling you now. He will not get past the Jets at 10. So kiss him goodbye. Talles Fuaga will not last to 16. I do not think Troy Furtado is going to last to 16 either. Someone is going to take Troy Furtado off the board before the Seahawks, in my opinion. He's too good. And I think what you'll find is that the Olive Fashionus and players like that are going to be there, not Troy Furtado and Talles Fuaga. So I'm not that interested in Olive Fashanu. I think you have that already. I don't want another player like that. So if you get there and Bowers is there, but Furtado and Fuagu's gone, then I think that's why you have to seriously consider it. You know, if you're not in the quarterback market and if you're in the best player available market, then he could be a great choice. And as for blocking, I'll tell you who Brock Bowers is, Robbie. Brock Bowers, I don't know if you've listened to him speak. Brock Bowers is the most, how do I put this? He's a very simple man, right? He gets up, he has his breakfast, he goes and plays football, and then he goes to bed. Like, there is nothing remotely exciting about Brock Bowers. When he speaks, he uses like 5-word sentences, and they're just no nonsense, to the point. I imagine if you were stuck in an elevator with him, it would be a tedious experience because there would be no conversation. Like, he is a man of few words. He is quite serious, and he is all football. Like, he just lives and breathes football. So while he may not be Gronk as a blocker, and he definitely isn't 270 pounds or 65 pounds, whatever Gronk was, you're going to get every ounce from him. You're going to get everything. So I think it's you know, it's not right to say that he's not a great blocker or anything like that. I think he's,
and it's a position of need. So not only I think you're taking best player available, it also fits a need that you have. So it's a win-win in my opinion.
It does. Anyway, we've kind of got into a lot of different topics there, so I think we're going to call it a day. Thank you to everybody for watching. It's been great numbers again. Really appreciate that. If you missed any of the start, then just go back and check it out. Of course, we're going to be talking a lot more draft. We've got another, 6 weeks of this before the draft starts, maybe even 7. So there's been plenty of conversation for more draft talk. If anything big happens in the week in terms of free agency, I will jump on and either do a video or a live stream, and then we'll see if Robbie and or Adam can join us. But either way, there will be content on this channel when anything happens in free agency of significance for the Seahawks. So make sure you subscribe, because you don't want to miss any of the videos. SeahawksDraftBlog.com is going to be on top of absolutely everything. Please like this video. Please leave a comment in the comment section, even if it's just to say, go Hawks, because everything helps. Big thank you to Robbie for giving up his time today as well. Thank you to all of you for watching. Until next time, bye for now.